It's a Final Word Daily, day 13 of this Men's T20 World Cup in the UAE. Adam Collins with you, Jeff Lemon with me on the day as the Spice Girls sung, I think, when 4 become 3 in Group 1. Something like that. Jeff, first and foremost, tell us how Australia spanked Bangladesh in 30 seconds.
It was embarrassing for Bangladesh. A wicket in each of the first 3 overs, 3 for 10, never really found a way back after that. Shamim Hussain tried to smack a few, but Adam Zampa took 5 for 19, 4 ducks, 4 single-figure scores. They got bowled out for 73. Australia chased it in 6.2 overs. Finch 40 off 20. Marsh 16 off 5. Absolutely belted them. Australia's net run rate is above South Africa's, so Australia is number 2 in the group.
They did everything right. Australia today needed to be a net run. It needed to be a percentage booster in football terms, and that's exactly what it was. We've talked about Bangladesh struggling against the pace and seam, which we've seen a bit more of in this comp than we thought might be the case, and it was again today. Then Adam Zampa cleaned up 5 for 19. I mean, this guy is really at his peak at the moment. We think of Adam Zampa being, I think anyway, a relatively young bowler, but he's quite experienced. He's played in a couple of World Cups. He's been around the traps, and he lands it on a 5-cent piece from the minute he comes into the attack. A wicket with his first ball again today. Unlucky not to claim an international hat-trick as well after the fast bowlers. And Glenn Maxwell inside the power play did everything right.
Yeah, Adam Zampa he knows how to get belted, but he doesn't get belted much. He doesn't really let it rattle him, I think, but occasionally someone gets hold of him, but he's pretty hard to put out of the ground. So players who do go after him, it doesn't tend to work. But today was all about the wrong end to the left-handers. He got 3 left-handers out in that fashion. He had catches behind the wicket. He had catches at slip. You know, it wasn't classic T20 sort of bowling. It was a more aggressive sort of style of bowling than that, with those fielding positions in place. So everything was set up for him to succeed, though, with the way things started at the top. I mean, Bangladesh, let's call it as it is. They've been absolutely dreadful in this tournament. People, I think including us, thought that maybe they'd be a semi-finalist. You know, they had this good varied bowling attack. They had, a range of experienced players batting through the middle with Mahmudullah, with Shakib, with Mushfiqur Rahim. They'd knocked off a bunch of good teams coming into it. And yes, granted, they were on terrible tracks and all the rest of it when they were playing against Australia and New Zealand. But coming into the group stages, the preliminary bit of this World Cup, it almost felt like it would be to Bangladesh's advantage, because they'd get a couple of games to tune up against more manageable opposition and then launch themselves into the group. It's gone the other way around. They lost to Scotland. They barely qualified from the first part. They got bowled out by South Africa for 84. They've choked a couple of times when they had games that should have been in the bag against Sri Lanka and West Indies. And then today was absolutely dreadful. 2 chop-ons in the first 2 overs. So Mitchell Starc getting the inside edge from Lytton Das, and then Hazelwood getting the inside edge from Sumyasaka. And then Maxwell bowls the 3rd over. When England played Maxwell in the power play a few days ago, they just belted him out of the attack. Against Mushfiqur Rahim, the most important bat in that Bangladesh lineup, he gets a nice off break with a bit of turn, but a proper top-line player shouldn't be letting that hit their pad in front of middle and off stump and have it going on to hit. So 3 for 10. There was never really a way back from there. Mohammad Naim struck a few nice shots for his 17. He played well when the ball was pitched up, but as soon as it was short, he got out trying to hook Hazelwood. And then really it was all over. Mahmudullah was there for a fair bit of the innings, but was basically just watching wickets fall at the other end. And Shamim hit one great 6 off Zampa, really nailed him to the long side of the ground on the slog sweep, took on the bowling a few more times and had some gumption and some excitement for a young 21-year-old player taking on the bowling. But it always felt like it was going to be futile, and from halfway through the innings, Australia looked like they would have the opportunity to get that net run rate boost. I mean, they ended up bowling them out in 15 overs. The whole match went for 21.2 overs, so it was barely one innings to complete the whole match.
Yeah, I think Shamim Hussain is a likely type. I share your view about 21-year-old with something to him. But as a rule, it feels like an old team. I know they're not all old, but it just feels like an old core. And I'm not saying that Mahmudullah, Mushfiqur, Shakib, who's missed the last few games, I mean, it could be a very different competition if they knock off Sri Lanka in that first game, or if they hold their nerve against the West Indies. But failing to do so at the start, of course, the Scotland experience on day one of qualifying, I just felt as though Bangladesh sort of had one foot on the plane, knowing they couldn't qualify, and that reflects the way they've been bowled out in very similar circumstances to South Africa at the start of the week and now on Thursday to Australia. So their shot. As for Australia, Jeff, I'm still not entirely sure they've found the right complete combination, because they haven't been really tested here today. But Mitchell Marsh back in the team, given the opportunity to make quick runs. He looked impressive. He looked tall. I mean, Mitchell Marsh at his best as an imposing figure. I appreciate that Mitchell Marsh's contribution today was informed by the fact that he came out with 20 or so to get. But, from little things, big things grow and all the rest of it. He did have a good tour to Bangladesh and to the West Indies and against New Zealand earlier in the year as well. So I'm surprised he missed that game against England. I wasn't on the show that day, but I think it stands to reason he'll remain in the 11 through to the pointy end of this competition. Now they're down to the final three in this group, as I mentioned off the top. And the three quick strategy continues to work. I feel for Ashton Agar, but if you've got Pat Cummins bowling as well as he is, Josh Hazlewood ever so consistent, Mitchell Starc nearing his best again, and Adam Zampa, who we mentioned already, quite outstanding throughout the comp so far, I'm just not sure where Agar fits, which I feel desperately sorry for him. As he said in the build-up to this game, he's not been dropped. There's just no spot for him in the side when they're playing three quicks. Disappointing as it is for him, I think they have to have Mitchell Marsh there as an option to explode at three and work around that more than worrying too much about their fifth bowler when Zampa's doing so well and they've got Maxwell to lean on and overs from Mitchell Marsh and potentially Marcus Stoinis as and when. It's not perfect. I'm not saying it's a tournament winning combination, but it feels more likely to me than having Agar batting at 7 and playing 5 specialist bowlers.
Pat Cummins got a raw deal today. He was the wicketless bowler, none for 18 off 3 overs, didn't even get his 4th over because all the wickets had already fallen. Every other bowler took a wicket in their first over today. It was a free-for-all, basically. Come on and bowl and pick up a pole. That was just the way it worked.
And Cummins nearly did first ball as well. Smith was so close in at backward point. Had he been set 3 metres back, or had it been a taller fielder, maybe Glenn Maxwell even, at backward point, if it wasn't for the fact that Maxwell was bowling the previous over, he would have been there, and maybe Cummins would have got a wicket in his first over as well. I think that's a worthy point to make on the way through. He should have been part of that.
Yeah, but this is one of these results where it's very difficult to draw any conclusions from it. I don't think it necessarily means much, in the same way as I don't think it meant much when Australia were losing in Bangladesh back in August, because, when you're playing on such ropey tracks where teams are defending 110 and being bowled out for 60 and 70 and so on. I mean, both teams were battling to put scores on the board in that context. It didn't seem like you could really draw any lasting conclusions from it. This is the same, because this is a busted Bangladesh team who mentally were already on the plane out of here. The only thing that Australia can take from it that might be meaningful is a bit of enthusiasm and a bit of happiness, particularly with the batting, because they were so slow and drudgy against England. Having that liberation of knowing, okay, we've got 74 to get, but we're not going to try to get them in 15 overs. We're going to try to get them in 6 overs. And that's what they did. They basically won the game in the power play. Aaron Finch had a go at everything that came his way, just about. It was literally hit and miss. He was nearly bowled a couple of times. He got onto 4 bombs and put them into the stand as well, and missed out on quite a few shots too, and was eventually out bowled, missing a delivery. But he would probably feel better for just coming out and going at a 200 strike rate, 40 off 20. Marsh, you mentioned, he just looked so good. Like, the shots that he hits look so in control. Pull shot first ball for 4, split the leg side sweepers with such authority. It was literally one of those ones that as soon as he hit it, you thought, it doesn't matter if there are boundary riders, that's going for 4. He smacked one back past the bowler with just such ferocity that you wouldn't have wanted to be in the way, and then finished it off with a pull for 6. So I think maybe one thing for Australia is he wasn't in that side that got thrashed by England, and maybe they can tell themselves, well, if he'd been there, it might have been different. It might not have been different. It probably wouldn't have been different, but that's something for Australia to hold on to. And the only lasting worry for them is that Warner looked awful again, was tapping and running singles in a game situation where they had to be taking the bowling on. He did hit 3 boundaries, but he hit one proper David Warner shot where he, the one where he gets up on the balls of his feet and punches through backward point. Oh, yeah. Nailed one of them, but the other 2 were top edges over the top of short third, pretty streaky, and then he got out missing a ball that he was trying to smear over the leg side, and just still doesn't look right. So if he's not going to come good at the top of the order, that's a massive problem. Yeah, so Finch in the runs for the second time in the tournament. Good news for him. The highest score in the power play so far in the competition, where Australia made 67. They do it easy in the 8th over. Jeff, moving to the second game where Sri Lanka were playing the West Indies. The Windies needing to win and win big in order to hang in there as far as net run rate is concerned. I'll sum it up in 30 seconds. I'll go now. The West Indies won the toss and bowled. Sri Lanka batted magnificently. Asalanga, Nasanka, Shanaka, the captain, making 25 in a hurry at the end. They get to 190. The Windies weren't in it really after 2 wickets in the second over, courtesy of Fernando, losing both openers. Gale out for 1, Lewis out for 2 or 3. They had Hetmeyer tee off towards the end, making 80-odd not out, which flattered them, losing by 20 runs, but really they were a long way gone, in no small part due to the brilliant fielding from Sri Lanka, taking 3 excellent catches. And they are a team, especially around Hasaranga, who have a little bit about them. So they're not going to progress in this competition. But, Jeff, I like the look of Sri Lanka. Yeah, I felt like everything worked for Sri Lanka today. They've got a particular approach, and it came off. They had Kusal Perera give them the really fast start, put the foot down right from the outset, got out for 29, but that was enough to give them that early nitro boost. They had Asalanka, who's been so good through this tournament. I think I've loved watching him bat every time, and Nasanka forming the core of the innings, and then Dasan Shanaka putting himself up the order, and that paid off from the captain to come in and go at the highest strike rate of the innings towards the end. West Indies, I was surprised to realise they were still in contention to go to the semi-finals. In my mind, they were already out because they've been pretty dreadful as well. So the fact that they were mathematically still in it, had they been able to, to get a net run rate boost and beat Sri Lanka heavily, came as a surprise to me. But that's what they were thinking of. That's why they put Sri Lanka in. It backfired massively. And, once a team makes a big score, you're no chance of getting a net run rate boost, because if you do chase it, you'll be chasing it in the last few deliveries. There was a glimmer at the end. When Hetmeyer was still there, he needed 34 from the last 7 or 8 deliveries. So it was like, all right, if he can hit 5 sixes in the last 7 balls, he can do it. And he tried. I mean, credit to him, he absolutely gave it a red hot go, and he just couldn't quite get them out of the middle. He edged one into his own pad. He smacked one back that hit the bowler. He smacked one back that hit the non-striker. I mean, he didn't have any luck in that last over when he was trying to just launch everything that he could. But you look at the wreckage of that innings. So Puran makes 46, Hetmeyer makes his 81, everyone else in single figures. Like, there was just no contribution from any of the senior West Indies players. Russell out for 2 again, Gale out chipping to mid-on early, Evan Lewis getting bowled off the inside edge, and Curran Pollard getting bowled for a duck by an absolute beauty from Hasaranga, a googly that just outfoxed him completely and hit the off stump when Pollard went across the line. Yeah, 1 or 2 googlies for Hasaranga, who moved to number 1 in the world in T20 cricket for bowlers today before the game. So he's enhancing his reputation at every opportunity. You mentioned Asalanga making 68 not out from 41. Oh, 68, sorry, he was dismissed, but 68 through the middle stages, putting on 91 with Nasanka, who made 51 from 41. They looked fantastic. You mentioned the flyer they got courtesy of Perera too, who made 29. Russell took a couple of wickets for the West Indies. I mentioned the fielding from Sri Lanka. It's actually going to be a Hall of Fame nomination for me. We'll get there in a moment. But Karunaratne took that fabulous catch off Jason Holder running in towards the end. The game was done by then. He didn't need to put his body on the line in quite that way, but was fully committed to it. Rajapaksa, that short mid-wicket early on off Roston Chase, that was a screamer. Had no reaction time. Chase absolutely
bloody middled that, and he needed to move quickly to his right and did so and got the hand in the way. And there was a great sliding catch as well from Dhananjaya off Nicholas Pooran down there at long off. He was there as a sub fielder. So yeah, it just feels to me like Sri Lanka, sure, they're out of the comp. Sure, they've had a longer stretch at this tournament, having to get there via qualifying, but they're doing everything in their power to ensure they're in the top 8 at the end of this, which will mean they don't have to qualify next time around, and they're ending well. They're ending positively. And after they came to England earlier this year and had an absolute stinker, they were basically uncompetitive across all of the white ball games, especially in the T20s. That they have bounced back well under the leadership of Dasun Shanaka, who I remember really burst onto the scene back in 2015 and 2016. He looks a fine young leader, supported by a bunch of enthusiastic left-handers. We always like that in the white ball game, and they earned their victory tonight. And looking forward to seeing what they're going to be capable of into the future. Jeff, in terms of how it frames up this Group 1 with net run rate, it does mean that the Windies now are gone, and Australia and South Africa are going to be duking it out for that second spot.
All eyes on that. South Africa would have to beat England handsomely in order to get over the net run rate if Australia beat the West Indies. If Australia don't, could be opened up. The Hall of Fame, it comes to you courtesy of Woodstock Cricket Bats. They make officially the best bats in the world. They were named the best. That's how it works. You can get 20% off one. 20% off one with TFW20. You put that code in at woodstockcricket.co.uk. In the Hall of Fame for you, you mentioned the fielding. I've never met a Karunaratne that I didn't like, and so having that particular effort today, I enjoyed that. It's hard to go past a hat trick being dropped, because that's what happened to Adam Zampa. I'm pretty sure no Australian bowler bowled 2 overs in a row. So Zampa got 2 wickets from the last 2 balls of an over, then had to wait for 3 or 4 overs, and then came back and got an outside edge from the first ball of his next over, and it was dropped behind the stumps. There was a bit of byplay. You could hear Zampa on the stump mic saying, "That was my hat trick," and Matthew Wade saying, "Yeah, I tried to catch it."
I tried.
Matthew Wade's got a lot of stick for his keeping over the years, and some of it's been deserved, but in that instance, it wasn't his fault. It was a very hard edge, a very fast edge, and it was going wide of him. There was no way that he could or should have got his gloves across, I don't think, to be able to anticipate that. It hit the ends of his fingers as he went across to it, not the ends of his fingers as he was going towards the ball. So I don't think that was keeper error, but just not quite for Zampa.
Yeah, I think it was more an overspin, a top spinner, than it was a wrong one. They called it as a wrong one on commentary, but yeah, it did get that extra elevation. Thus why it hit the top of the webbing of the glove, and I did enjoy that exchange as well. As I did an exchange between Karunaratne and Andre Russell when getting him out court and bolt. Another good catch, by the way, in his follow through, and he gave it these ones, and he really said, "What are you doing? You're not thinking about it." It was a top send off there from Karunaratne, which I did enjoy. I should say, by the way, for our Sri Lankan viewers, I'm wearing my Endeavour Hills Cricket Club hoodie at the moment, because we have got at my club in the southeast suburbs of Melbourne none other than Tilakaratne Dilshan captaining the club this year. They're playing their first practice match this week, and Lahuru Tiramane, who is the vice captain of Sri Lanka at the moment, he's also playing for them. So if you're a Sri Lankan fan, you can follow Endeavour Hills over the next couple of months and see how those two blokes get on.
My last Hall of Fame nomination is for Andre Russell, who's gone 0-5, 0-2 so far in this tournament. 7 runs in the tournament for the guy who so often would come in and do things like score 60 off 17 at the end of an IPL game. It's disappointing, but it's very notable that it sums up the West Indies tournament that so many of their big strikers haven't come off this time around. So that's my last Hall of Fame for today.
Sounds good. In wrapping up, day 14, we'll have New Zealand and Namibia at Sharjah. Now, it's all about net run rate in that game, and India versus Scotland. Of course, India need New Zealand to slip up somewhere, but both sides are going to be duking it out at the moment. New Zealand have a plus 0.82 and India a plus 0.07. So watch this space tomorrow at Sharjah and Dubai, respectively. The Final Word Daily, thanks to Woodstock Cricket. If you like what we do, you can support us at patreon.com/The Final Word, and all of our old eps at finalwordcricket.com. Our history show, Storytime, at least it's Storytime, is out again this weekend. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon signing off from day 13. Can't wait to do it all again tomorrow. Good night.
Later.